Okay, so I'm finally getting around to loading these up, and I was just gonna finally got back down to the shop here, and I was just gonna load these up and take them on out while I still got some daylight and fireform them. And I thought, you know, I'm gonna record some of this because I just wanted to show you that you can set up a production line. And it's always going to be about a production line when you're doing something quickly. And you gotta, no matter what the tooling is that you're using, you work with and find out. Boy, my favoriteest of all priming tools is screwing up here. This is still a favorite priming tool of mine. This one is getting worn. This is why I said I would buy 20. And I said that there's a lot of things in the gun industry are that way. And I kind of told you in one video about meeting Stuart Leatherman and how they were almost that way. Maybe I wasn't completely clear on what I was referring to when I said I would buy 20 of these. Some of the best products in the world sell to such a limited market that they're non-sustainable in the long term. Doesn't make them a bad... This particular tool went off the market because the segment of the population that wanted to use it wasn't big enough to support the tool's existence. And there are a lot of the things that I really like in this world that fall into that category. So I'm serious. When I remember one time I was at a sportsman show, and one of the things, I was into archery. Archery is as bad as hunting. In fact, archery is worse than shooting in... Wow, I got somebody checking in on me. Hang on just a second. Archery is a thing that, when you first start into archery, you go to the archery pro shop and the pro guy sets you up. And all is good. Then you get more and more into accuracy, and you get more and more into really using your equipment, which means you start hunting, you start elk hunting, you want to push big old broadheads, and you find out that them big old broadheads don't go where you wanted them to. That you can have the archery shop tune your bow up and it's perfect and it's shooting little dots and your arrows are flying like darts and they're paper tuning and they're helicaled and they're this and they're that, all archery. You throw on some broadheads and now all of a sudden you go wildly off into this thing of timing your broadheads and tuning and spine and how checking, and it's as poorly misunderstood as a bullet's flight. But if you're ever going to get good enough to tune your own equipment such that you can hit an elk with a broadhead with the same efficacy as that you can shoot targets. In other words, if you want your broadheads to hit at the same place as your field points, these are archery terms, you have got to learn to tune crazy good. You got to learn to do things that the archery pro shop guy dude can't do. So, I'm going to show one day, and I come around the corner, and here's this guy that's got an archery rest that you cock like a mousetrap, and when you pull the trigger, it falls away. And I went, dude, seriously, and I bought him out. And I used him for years, world's first fall-away rest, years before there were fall-away rests. Now fall-away rests have become the standard of the industry, but it took some time. But I recognize their efficiency. I still have 3 of the old fall-away rests that you actually have to cock and walk around in the woods with them cocked like a mousetrap. And they shoot like all that. I've got something jammed in my little priming tool. But in the end, the good guys won, and the fall-away rest came into use. It became the standard of the industry because it was the best. It is the best. There is nothing else in its class. And I am having a hard time convincing you that this particular priming tool is the best in this class. I think I left a little bushing out that is supposed to go in it, so I'm going to fight this. But I wanted to use this opportunity because using this kind of antique here, of which I am down to only having about 3 left, reminds me that I wish I could buy some more. So I said that a lot of things in the gun industry are that way. If you don't buy some now, the company's going to be gone and you're not going to be able to get them anymore. I can no longer get that fall-away rest, which is not all bad because they've come up with another fall-away rest that actually works better. I put this thing away with that. I remember last time I used this, it had a primer lodged on the lip, and I said that's weird, and I warped the lid on this thing. Phew. Hopefully I have some more lids. Or maybe I can rewarp this lid back. Got a bunch of methods that I can do that. But it's just simply not sitting down the way it's supposed to. So I was going to try to explain myself a little better while I'm priming these up. Now that we're finally back to where I can again get some fireforming done. I've been talking about this fireforming for days on video. And we're finally going to do it. But I just wanted to clear up my reference to buy something when you can, because there's been a lot of products on the market. And back when Leatherman came out with their knife, and they just about lost it because they sold one to everybody, and then sales were in the tank, and refurbs were on the rise, and they were having trouble. So they had to come up with a bunch more products and sell a bunch more. It's a great story about how they sold that many more products to that many more people, and they put Leatherman back on the map. And it ended up being all good. But had that not happened, they would have just joined the ranks of all those hundreds of great products. This is actually a great product. It just requires some maintenance, and I overuse it. That's one of the reasons it's in such tough shape, is because I just overuse it. And speaking of overuse, it brings me to another thing. While I'm priming, setting up my production line here, I just noticed that these priming trays don't have a hole in the bottom. I actually have to pick this thing up. So what's going to happen in my next production line, when I go to fill these with powder, we're going to see something else going on. I'm going to be fussing because I basically have to physically, literally, if I miss a row of these and I dump them full of powder, I'm going to have to set up somewhere in my production line, I'm going to have to set up a check station where I can check to see if I got all these primed. Because there's nothing, I have no way of knowing if they all got primed or not. And I don't like that. So there, I just started back down a row the wrong way. I'm already having to, while I'm talking, peek at these. And I hate it. I just don't like it. Even though all I'm doing is fireforming. All I'm doing is priming to load for fireforming. Maybe this is why they quit selling these, because too many people had trouble with this particular brand of primer, because I've got many hours on these machines. Tens of thousands, and maybe I've just never used this particular primer in it. Because this primer is not working really as well as I wish. So, in some ways, this entire industry is small, and it's faceted, and there's only so much. this YouTube channel falls into the same thing. I'm out cruising around the net looking at, and even the really high end, in this specialized kind of stuff, I would put myself into the same kind of specialty category as somebody like, there's a guy out there named Tibersaurus Rex, or a guy out there named James Yeager, who's all about handgun efficacy and his ideas of how to make a fighting gun and all kinds of stuff that I particularly find laughable, but that's neither here nor there. I'm not a gunfighter, and don't aspire to be, but maybe old Jamie Yeager is, and that's fine, good for him. And by the same token, maybe Tibersaurus Rex is doing what he does. But where I'm going is the pool of people is such that even these guys who are considered to be well placed in the specialty genre, a lot of their videos only get like 4, 5, 6, 7,000 views. Well, if you're selling a product and you stand to make $10 a piece on them, or $5 a piece. I touched on this earlier talking about tuners. I'm working with a tuner that I think may work. It may be a really cool tuner, I don't know, but it's tested out pretty good at this point. Now, will I ever sell it? Not really, because the market is really too small to make it worth it. I'm sorry, but if I sold one to every one of you guys that watch this video, it wouldn't be enough, in my case, to justify tooling up to make the tuner, probably. Might, but I'd have to sell thousands of them to make it worthy. So instead, I'm just passing on information, and one of the bits of information has to do with these small, boutique-type products. One of the reasons I hate the Shytac so much, it's a boutique cartridge. Like, I hate boutique cartridges. I hate dinking with them. I hate fighting with them. I hate getting brass for them. I hate. There's everything to hate for me, because I don't want to have to wait to get stuff. Man, bragging away about how good this tool is, and I can't even get it to work. Oh, it's good to put it back together wrong. Okay, talking. But the reason I did this was to show you that even with, one of the things that we're going to talk about later in other videos is reloading presses, and what's a straight one and what's a good one, and dies, and how to use dies, and what do dies do, and are all dies equal, and are all reloading presses equal, and how do we decide what's good and what's bad, and there's a whole lot of stuff to think about, people. There are ways to make informed choices. Those watching this video may right now be making the informed choice to never use this priming tool. I'm still going to say, no, that's not true. Once it's working, it's a good priming tool. I love it. But I haven't made any points today. Well, we'll prime a few of these because I want to show you how to use a powder thrower properly, even for fireforming. When it comes to accuracy, yes, it's the culmination of a whole bunch of little things, but there's an expression. When I was in school, people said practice makes perfect. Now you talk to any sports person and they'll say, no, perfect practice makes perfect. I happen to subscribe to that. Perfect practice. That means practice isn't enough. If you're going to get really good at something, you first have to learn how to decide what is perfect practice. And by practice, that doesn't necessarily mean practice as in shooting free throws. It means practice as in doing, practicing, like a doctor practices medicine. If you're going to practice the accuracy discipline, you've got to learn some good reloading practices. And one of the hardest things to learn is how to use, a lot of the pressure spikes that are present in a lot of people's systems have to do with the use of powder throwers. Not weighing, but measuring powder. And measuring powder is an art and a science. And I'm going to say that the correct way, I'm going to see if I can see these from the top. Man, I think I can see every primer in there from the top. How cool is that? So, the first thing when you're using a powder thrower is to develop, pull the lid off, which you can't see, but there's the lid, and you develop a consistent technique. And to do that, you gotta throw and dump a few loads. Because I'm talking, I'm just gonna take this simple technique right here. I'm gonna say, okay, I think I've got that. Because we get these guys that come from all different walks of life, and they're dabbling with the idea of, should I try this bench rest thing? Oh, and I'm just going to say that there's practices that you can use that will make a difference, and one that comes right out of bench rest that will make a difference. I hope I haven't set myself up for a fall here by the way I mounted this on my vise. But this is a bench rester's trick. This is a thing. You load your cartridge blocks with the thrower using a technique that allows it to become nearly as repetitious as, and this comes back to that question of reloading presses. I get guys saying, hey, can you reload as good a ammo on a progressive as you can on conventional equipment? And the answer is somewhat yes. I will say that some of the progressives that have a plate such that the plate can wear so that you get different tolerances, load to load, will screw with accuracy. But by the same token, manual equipment can be made to act as progressive if you set up Henry Ford's production line. Now, a true progressive, every time I crank this handle, will do like 3 operations. But by the same token, it takes them a little longer than this. So let's say it's 2 to 1, twice the operations. I'm doing only 1 operation, but because I'm not picking up a case, holding it up there, putting it back, moving my hands around, 2 things are happening. I'm getting a better throw this way, a more consistent throw this way, and it's going quite a bit faster than doing it the other way. Almost like doing it as a progressive. So the way you set up your reloading station can change your ability to load good, accurate ammunition. The biggest thing with consistency is each operation, try to do the entire operation at the same time under the same conditions using the same moves. And when it comes to the kind of accuracy we're talking about, PPC accuracy, unless you're going to buy your cases pre-made, you have to learn how to do cases, which is what we're doing right now. We're actually, this is part of the case forming process that maybe doesn't have to be that persnickety, but if you start shooting a BR rifle, you're going to find out that this is how you loaded a match also. Generally, with short-range bench rest, you actually have to load and shoot at the match to match the conditions that are present at that match. And this is why I guess I feel that it's so important to not only see techniques, but way more importantly than that is to understand the why. We're going to do that with bullet flight. We're going to do that with loading. We're going to do that with accuracy, shooting. We're going to do that with different things all the way through this to try, because without the why, you're helpless. I talked earlier about I use a lot of different engineers. I remember one time when I was out of high school, I had forgotten my trig functions, and I was trying to figure bullet drop onto a target, explaining why a bullet can exhibit as nose high because it's falling through the target tangent to, or coming into the target at an angle, and you could replicate it by setting a target sideways to your bullet and shooting through it and getting a sideways tear through the paper. And this whole thing's going on, and I had forgotten, so I called my buddy and I said, why do you, I'm trying to figure that angle, it just takes sine, cosine, and tangent. And he's like, so katoa, all Indian chief, so katoa. And it reminded me of something that's the difference between why people and remembering people. Sol Katoa, the old Indian chief, is how you remember SOH, CAH, and TOA. Sine over hypotenuse. It's ways to it's to remember the basic trig functions. And I said, but why? I need to know why. When is it appropriate to use sine versus cosine versus tangent? Well, because tangent is opposite over adjacent. I said, no, but why? He had no, we went around, he didn't even know what I was asking. He remembered, he's a good math, people call him a math whiz. But it's, you know, and I had a zoology teacher that basically gave us the courses, gave us the test answers to memorize, and people memorized and they learned a little bit. But I'm not that kind of I don't learn that way. I like to learn why, because the why is way more important to me than the fact. Facts change with climate, they change with distance, they change with, there's always things that I don't understand about facts. So if I can learn why, now later I learned why, because 90-degree angle, you got a fixed one here, and the three angles all have to add up to 180 degrees. So if you got 90 here, you got 90 left, and if you got a 45 and a 45, then sine and cosine are the same, 45 to equal 90, and as this one goes down to say, I mean, this is the math. This is, most of you are laughing, but the point is, it's not about remembering sol katoa. It's about knowing why for every sine there's a cosine. And it took me a while to understand, to find someone. And this is why I'm so disenchanted with so-called experts. I like to find geeks. I like to find people that geek out about whatever their profession is. Somebody who, I've got a son who's a really, I won't call him a math savant because I've met math savants. He's better at math than anybody you'll ever meet, my son. He can do any kind of math on the fly all the time, but it's because he passionately loves math. So he learns why. You ask him anything about math or computers, and he won't just tell you how to fix it. He'll say, why? See, I can do that with a car. It's the car's not charging. You got to do something with the alternator. Why? Well, because the alternator is generating power to recharge the battery. Otherwise, you drive down the road, the battery goes dead. There's nothing to retain. It's all taking, you know, the system drives on the fact that you've got regenerative things here. While the motor is running, it's not only powering the car down the road, it's also regenerating the battery so that you can. So it's an alternator. Us old guys can all, yeah. But why? I'm just using that to reference a couple of points I wanted to make while I was doing this. About buy the good stuff when you can, because it might be going away. Why is always more important than anything else that I can think of, and it's almost always useful to set up a production line, because that's America.